When you think about the government, you probably picture this huge, unchangeable institution, right? Kind of like a giant boulder. But what if I told you that a tiny little idea managed to take root inside that boulder and actually start to crack it open from the inside out? Well, that's the wild story we're diving into today, the quiet revolution of coaching in government. And it all starts right here with this book. The question it poses is, well, it's pretty bold. Can a different kind of conversation, a coaching mindset, actually transform the culture of these massive government agencies? Let's peel back the cover and find out. This whole movement didn't kick off with some top-down official policy. No, it began with an idea, beautifully captured here by one of the pioneers, G. Lee Salmon. He's talking about listening and silence and creating space for possibilities. I mean, that doesn't sound like any government initiative I've ever heard of, does it? The book itself actually opens with this exact question. And if we're being honest, for a lot of us, the words that pop up are probably things like bureaucracy, slow, rigid, you know the drill. It's a stereotype, for sure. But man, it is a powerful one. And this is really where our story kicks off. Because behind that stereotype, something totally different was happening. A bottom-up, honest-to-goodness grassroots movement was starting to grow, led by people who just believed there had to be a better way to work and lead. So you might be thinking, okay, but is this a real thing or just some niche idea? Well, you don't have to look much farther than the cover to see who's vouching for this story. And the names? Well, they tell you everything you need to know about how high the stakes are. First up, you've got the CEO of the International Coaching Federation. Wow, that endorsement immediately signals that this movement inside the US government isn't just some isolated experiment. It's being looked at as a globally relevant model for changing the public sector. And then you get this, a direct message from a former leader within the government's own learning community, calling it a must-read. That tells you that the lessons in here are absolutely essential for the very people in charge of developing the federal workforce. So who's actually telling this story? This is what makes this whole account so incredibly powerful. The authors aren't outside consultants looking in. These folks were the pioneers, right there in the trenches, building this thing from day one. So you have Dr. Theodora Fitzsimmons. She didn't just write a paper about this stuff. She went into the Defense Intelligence Agency and built an award-winning coaching program from the ground up with the goal of fundamentally changing the culture. Then there's Mary Kate Behan Doherty. Just look at her experience. NASA, the Treasury, the Peace Corps. That gave her this incredibly unique vantage point on how to build programs that could actually work across these vastly different government cultures. I'm rounding out this incredible team is Alan Lee Myers. You could say he was the architect. As the founding director of the official training program, his whole vision was about creating the infrastructure to make this a sustainable, government-wide coaching culture. So here's the bottom line. Their credibility is just off the charts. They didn't just interview people for this story, they are the story. They built the programs, they hit the roadblocks, and they lived this entire journey themselves. All right, so how did this all happen? Because it sure wasn't some big top-down order. It was a truly unlikely organic revolution. The authors use this incredible metaphor that I just love. It wasn't a flood from on high. It started as just a few drops of rain. A handful of people who saw the power of coaching. They started small programs, creating these little puddles of change all over the place. And here's how those puddles started to connect and form a real body of water. It began informally back in the early 2000s, but the first huge breakthrough was in 2012, with a meeting that led to the Federal Coaching Network. Just 2 years later, their training program is winning major awards. And then, in 2018, the final crucial piece clicks into place. And this is it, the big one. A memo from the Office of Personnel Management. That's basically the HR department for the entire federal government. It officially endorsed coaching, calling it one of the most valuable resources they could offer. That grassroots movement had finally gotten top-level validation. The lake was officially formed. So what did all this work and all these years actually change? I mean, it wasn't just about launching a new program. It was about creating a completely new way of thinking about leadership and service in government. This slide really just nails the heart of the change. You've got the old way, top-down, command and control, a culture of waiting to be told what to do. The coach approach completely flips that on its head. It's about asking questions, listening, and empowering people to find their own solutions. For any big organization, that's a huge shift. For the federal government, it's seismic. The story is so inspiring, right? But the real gold in this book is that it gives us a blueprint. It shows us exactly how this change was built, step by step. And here's their blueprint. It's so strategic. This wasn't random. First, they had to prove its value with hard data, the return on investment. Then they made it easy for people to find a coach by building a network. Once the demand was there, they standardized the quality with a formal training program. And only then, with all of that in place, did they push for official policy. It was a methodical plan designed to last. So, we end here. This whole story, from a handful of passionate people to an officially endorsed government-wide movement, it just proves that massive change doesn't always need a new law or a giant budget. Sometimes it just starts with a different kind of conversation. And it really leaves you wondering, doesn't it? What's a small change, a quiet revolution that you could start right where you are?